those papers. You guys will be studying. It's just like last time. However, also just like last time, you guys will have time in class to finish up any missing work. So if you're missing a test or a quiz or something like that, you'll be able to do it in class. I'll be hunting you down to some small extent for things. But I am also not your mother. I am not responsible for making certain everything gets turned in. And if something does not get turned in, it reverts to a 0, which can seriously hurt you if you let it. I really don't want to give anyone a 0 on anything because it makes me feel like I failed to convey to you the necessity of being self-sufficient. Not to mention, it always just looks bad. So, please do me the solid of making certain everything gets turned in. By the way, I did remember to add in everybody's +2 since I had to cancel the Wings of Glory tournament, the airplane thing, so everyone got +2 on that test. And then also everyone got +1 because I made it clear on question number 7, there wasn't actually a correct answer. I made a mistake on that. So I've adjusted the scores to make it more fair. And you don't need to add +3. I've already done it for you. So but anyways, good stuff there. I think the highest score anyone got on the test was a 60 out of 50, which is 120%. Bonus points. Yeah. They were making the darts rain, so not the highest point I ever had someone going in a test, but probably the second highest. The highest I ever had someone going in a test was with a +16. They got 100% on the test. So that was 132%. So it happens. But anyhow, so it was. I thought you guys did pretty good. What do you guys think about the place in chronological order questions?
I got them already.
Actually, I think I'm going to keep that for next year. I think I'm going to be doing some rearranging. It was a heck of a lot easier to grade than essays, and it just kind of feels a little bit more right historically. Well, the way I'm thinking about doing next year is the quizzes are going to go out the window, and instead they'll be essays. So like the quiz is going to make an essay at random. So it's a little brutal. I'm not using like here's 2 options, pick whichever essay you want to write and go. But then the test are going to get the decos in the multiple choice. That's kind of what I'm thinking about that. It's not how I think it's good. It's good. All right, did we talk about any of this yet?
No.
Did we finish the slides?
We showed a picture of the last
Yes,
thing.
we're good. My brain is not being very cooperative. Hi.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am right now, as a matter of fact. Yes. What? Oh, aggression, appeasement,
And more.
Okay. I'm not giving you a test, no.
On the quiz.
You more like need to know like the importance, like significance of these things. So, in short, no. It's no big deal. Now, however, let me point out a few different things. One of the things I find about World War II that people are completely unaware of is the terrible treatment of other groups of people by the other fascist powers of Europe that we've never even considered. For instance, one of the things about the Japanese military during this era is the training regime that they went through emphasized aggression and viewing the enemy as non-human. They believed essentially that if you can create soldiers who have no human compassion, who do all these different types of terrible things, then you could have an effective fighting force. Now, Japan, as an island geographically, does not have very many natural resources. And so they were looking to create an empire of their own, and in particular was targeting China. This is partially due to the kind of turbulent political structure in China at the time, but also because, geographically they're kind of next door neighbors. So Japan began invading places in eastern China and started adding to their empire. For instance, they added Manchuria in 1931, and immediately the League of Nations condemns Japan for this. They basically, what is condemning this person? Basically, the League of Nations did not approve of Japan's invasion of China, criticized them, basically told them to stop, but really didn't back that up with any real threats. And so Japan basically just kind of blew it off, like, what are you going to do about it? Now, ostensibly, Japan had diplomats that were trying to work things out, but really, on the heart of it, Japan wasn't going to listen to the League of Nations. They even went so far as to criticize the League of Nations, like England and France, like, you guys became world powers by imperializing other nations. Isn't it kind of, hypocritical for you now, after the fact, to be criticizing us for doing the same thing you did? So they kind of just like, whatever you did, I'll do what I want. Yeah, please. So they invaded the rest of more parts of Eastern China, I should say, in 1937, and during this period was, as I was saying, one of the worst abuses of human rights ever recorded in history, the rape of Nanjing. I'm going to show you a photograph. Okay. This photograph is the most graphic, disturbing image I'm going to show you all year. So, if you do not wish to see something truly horrifying, I will avert your gaze in 3, 2, 1.
Is it person? Oh my God! What is that?
These two guys were two Japanese army officers that were having a contest. And this is a newspaper article in Japan, basically updating people back home about the nature of the contest, who was winning, things like that, and who the winner was. This contest was who could decapitate the most innocent civilians in a week's time. Go get somebody's grandfather, chop their head off. It didn't count if you accidentally missed or something like that. So you had to do it. Just like someone with like a golf competition. I wonder how many heads they're going to get today. Why is it graphic? Why is it brutal? Why is it disturbing? They're treating the murder of people as a game. People are holding bets over it. The rape of Nanjing involved, I'm going to tell you what happened. And I guarantee it's going to be hard to believe. There's stuff that happened there that if you really, you hear about it, it's like, man, there's no way human beings can treat human beings like that. But it did happen. There are photographs, we know it. It's documented. This is not made up. So, there's a reason they call it the rape of Nanjing. There are more instances of rape occurring in this area of the world than pretty much any other time and place. I remember hearing a story, or reading a story, I should say, about a Japanese soldier talking about an experience that he had when they were, I forget where they were invading, it was some village essentially, and they came across a 14-year-old girl who refused to believe that the Japanese soldiers were this bad. So then she was gang raped by something like 37 people, and then they ate her.
They ate her?
Yes, they cannibalized her. Because they were hungry. I've seen stories of Chinese mothers who, after being gang raped, were cut open, and the soldiers were betting on whether the undeveloped baby was going to be a boy or a girl, killing them both, obviously. Stories of babies being placed on bayonets and marched around like a puppet. If you really want to be upset, you can look up the rape of Nanjing in Wikipedia, and there's photographs of all this stuff. Like I was saying, it is documented, this is not made up.
What's it called?
The rape of Nanjing. I'm telling you right now, you can hear this. I am not saying this is awesome, go check it out, you totally want to see it. I'm saying go there if you want to ruin your day. more like linear week. You will not be pleased.
Okay.
I'm dead serious. It's incredibly graphic. One of the things that became common was the mutilation of bodies. They would line, because the belief was you're not really capable of being a soldier more until you've killed someone. So they pull out civilians and they'd have the soldiers practice bayoneting them.
The Nanking? Is that also?
Rape of Nanjing.
It says Nanking. It says.
Either I'm totally screwing something up, or it might be really something else, or something. I'm not sure. My brain might not be functioning properly. Regardless, this is one of those abuses of human rights that we really don't talk about so much here, but you better believe it's talking about other places. It's still kind of a point of contention and kind of cools international relations between China and Japan to this day. I mean, it's kind of an important event. Other examples of abuses of human rights occurred in places like Ethiopia. Italy invaded in 1935, and the leader of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, went and basically asked the League of Nations to go and impose sanctions on Italy, which really they kind of half, They kind of didn't really follow through. And so Italy just kind of got away with it, and Haile Selassie was eventually assassinated and became a revered figure in Rastafarianism. But one of the things we're seeing time and time again is the League of Nations has no real power to do anything that it says. Now, ostensibly, the League of Nations could prevent some of this stuff by going to war. It's like if they just declared war on Italy and smashed it into the ground, then yeah, that would put an end to this. But people are so terrified of war after World War I that they're really, really resistant to the idea. Really resistant to going into another war. So Italy kind of gets away with it. Now, Italy at this time was fascist. It was led by a guy named Benito Mussolini. And what's interesting is Mussolini kind of became buddies with Germany because of the same ideology. They're also going to become buddies with Spain and Japan because they're sort of this neo-imperialistic group, which, keep in mind, after World War I, imperialism was pretty much frowned upon, even though it still existed, although in a weaker form. That's Haile Selassie. And he actually addressed the UN in a very legitimate speech talking about all the points, all these legal ideas and things like that. He's basically blown off. So, again, it's too loose to compare or we're too afraid of war. Spain is going to be under a civil war in the early part of the 20s, early part of the 30s, excuse me, because of a clash between the conservatives and liberals. In the end, Francisco Franco ends up taking over, and he's going to be a dictator until like the 1960s. He takes control in 1939 with the help of Germany. And one of the things we see Germany doing at this point is they've been developing their weapons program. Now, one thing, if you've ever talked to a World War II buff about technology, one thing you'll find out is German technology was pretty much superior. They did have some problems. For instance, some of their tanks were known for having mechanical problems. But for the most part, we're talking some pretty amazing advances. For instance, the very first machine gun, like assault rifle, like man-portable machine gun, was developed by the Germans. It was like the Sternstart or something like that. It basically means like storm gun. But it was pretty cool. And then they had all these other advances with B-2 rockets and the super tanks they developed. I mean, it was pretty amazing tech, which they had developed earlier on. In 1936, as this is going on, developing the 38 and 39, Germany started developing this tech. One great example, actually, is relatively simple in action. Whenever you're bombing from an airplane, right, it's actually, there's a lot more to it than just dropping a bomb and hitting the target. I mean, if you think about it, you've got to take into account your speed, you've got to take into account distance from the target, distance to fall, and how you're going to basically let this projectile fall so that it hits at exactly the right moment. It's really complicated and not easy to do. not to mention wind that can blow it out of the way. I mean, we're talking a lot of problems. And the thing is, like hitting targets matters because a lot of times you have factories next to things like schools and hospitals. So if you miss, you might instead blow up a bunch of children and think, daycare. So the Germans developed, not to mention, you want to actually hit the target you're going after. I mean, which is not even just humanitarian reasons, but also for practice. So the Germans developed a technique called dive bombing. And basically the premise is this. Instead of just, we're going to drop a bomb, that's the target. The principle is you fly upside down so that you're pointing directly at the target like so. So you do like a little so you're pointing straight at the ground. As you're pointing straight down, gravity works for you now. So it's much more accurate. They use a combination of weapon systems together. One of the things we're going to talk about is the development of the Blitzkrieg, which was this German strategy, lightning attack. The idea is you go in with planes and bomb the crap out of the enemy. So they put their heads down, then your tanks smash into them, and then you got your infantry coming in behind them. The idea is you drive a wedge right in the middle of the enemy defenses, encircle them with your infantry and your tanks, and just crush them in between things. It is incredibly effective, it's fast, it's brutal, and it's aimed expressly at taking down the static defenses that were developed during World War I. France is going to build a massive series of fortified trenches called the Maginot Line, specifically between Germany and France. And the Blitzkrieg is going to let Germany smash right through it. Not to mention Spain is buddies with Germany, and remember, those are the two countries bordering France, except for in the south, which is Italy, but again, Italy is siding with this sort of Axis powers forming, and we have this problem for France, which is one of the reasons why France falls really quickly in the war. Now, how do we get to Germany actually in the war? Well, if you remember, Germany was carved up due to the Paris Peace Conference. And Hitler's big idea of Lebensraum meant the need to regain these territories. So what Germany did is they would start supporting pro-German dissenters in these countries. And there's like the Rhineland, where basically you have these protests break out, and then evidence would start coming up that the government that they're trying to rise up against is oppressing the German people. So the Germans invade, citing the need to protect German lives. And then they would start saying, well, these Germans really just want to be part of Germany, so we're going to annex this territory back into the fold, back into Germany. And the League of Nations like, dude, you can't just invade nations. Germany's like, we're not invading. We're defending these people. They want to be part of our country. Yet you wrote this whole document saying that we should protect the rights of self-determination, and now you're telling us they can't be part of our country even though they want to? Isn't that hypocritical? Keep in mind, Hitler was a very good politician. So the League of Nations appeases Hitler, they acquiesce to his demands for really two reasons. One, they really don't want a war. And two, he's convincing enough that you've got the population back home in England. Some people are saying, well, why can't Rhineland be in Germany? I mean, they kind of want to be. And here's the beauty of that. Even with people who are saying, we need to stop Hitler, this is getting out of hand, like Winston Churchill, there's enough people who are dissenters of his saying, no, he's just a warmonger. He wants another war. He wants another shot at Germany. No, we don't want that. So he's playing the political game, not just back in Germany, this Hitler, I mean. He's also playing the political game in England. So he knows what he's doing. In the 1930s, Germany, as I said, they formed the Axis. And Japan jumps into this as well because they are being allies that have the same ideology. And Germany actually defends Japan's rights to invade other countries, again, to have the same ideology. So that's why they come up. In 1938, Germany annexes Austria and creates the Anschluss, which is this combined, quote-unquote, German territory. And essentially what it is it's like a protectorate of Austria. Essentially Germany is saying, well, Austria isn't part of Germany, but they're part of this territory and we're going to defend them. Really, it was an invasion. But again, it was a way of politicizing it and saying that, oh, we're just doing it this way. By the way, if you've been following the Crimean situation with Russia, all this stuff should sound very familiar because this is exactly what Vladimir Putin is doing there. So just throwing that out there. September 1938, the Munich Conference. Basically, Germany wanted to take Czechoslovakia and, or as part of Czechoslovakia, which was Sudetenland, which was this area that was kind of ethnically German. And the Allies were like, no, you can't have it. So he met with them and said, look, I'm not trying to start a war here. Once we get the Sudetenland, I'm not going to invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. I'm done with the Sudetenland. And so he ends up signing an agreement with Neville Chamberlain, who was the Prime Minister of England, saying, you know, we're not going to war. We're taking this and then we're done. Then we've got Germany. It's all good. And so Neville Chamberlain signs it and says, okay, you can have the Sudetenland, but then we're done. And then he was famous because, or rather, I should say, there's this famous moment in history. It's recorded, you can watch it on YouTube, where he's getting off of an airplane. He's saying, you know, I just spoke with Mr. Hitler, and we have signed an agreement. We've bought peace in our time. Yeah, there's this huge cheer. We've avoided a world war. How fantastic is this? We've got peace. You know, Germany's not an aggressive nation. It's all good. And so this really boosts Chamberlain's public image until Hitler breaks his promise and invades the rest of Czechoslovakia, at which case he is made a laughing stock. And the thing of it is, Winston Churchill, who was another politician, was telling him Hitler will not deal with us if we're giving in. Hitler recognizes strength. We have to be strong and shut him down if we're going to have any chance, because Hitler is aggressive. He is not going to stop. And people are like, no, we got this. And Chamberlain's got world peace, and oh crap, he was right all along. So Chamberlain gets voted out of office, and Churchill is voted in as prime minister. And he's sort of like the watchdogs, or the lion, sort of strong figure. He ends up leading England through some of the darkest times in its history. Because one of the things we're going to see is England was really close to Germany, and they're going to start getting bombarded day and night by German bombers, especially once Germany takes France. So, you know, there's a lot of incentive for the English people to surrender and give up, but he ends up having these radio broadcasts where he's encouraging the people to keep fighting. We'll never give up. We'll fight and fight and fight. And that sort of mentality inspired the English people to not surrender, and ultimately led to the Allies eventually kind of turning this whole war around and winning World War II. So, I mean, he was kind of an important dude for a lot of reasons, but he was a great statesman as well. He was also a drunk and a bigot, but that's okay. Everybody was. He's the type of guy who he would begin every morning with a glass of gin and would keep drinking from the moment he got up in the morning to when he went to bed. He also smoked cigars, also type thing like that. And he also was very witty. You can actually look up the number of his quotes. You know, I forget what. There was one politician who really didn't like him. The woman actually too. And at one point she said something to the effect of, you know, if he was my husband, you know, I forget what she said about it exactly. You know, he wouldn't be allowed to do this, that, or something like that. And his response was, "I would have to be drunk to be your husband," or something like that. It was just like, he was a master of the burn. He had a lot of one-liners of burning. You know, it was different. Anyway, very nice. So Auschwitz, we I'm sure to look at this. I went backwards, didn't I? Whoops. So he takes the rest of Czechoslovakia. And so, August 1939, he signs a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. Now, this is important. You might remember one of the big problems Germany had in World War I is they were fighting two front wars: a war with Russia and a war with Germany, with Britain and France in the West. He's trying to shore up that weakness ahead of time. And actually, he and Stalin kind of get along. They're kind of buddies, and they basically make an agreement that if I invade Poland, we're not going to fight each other. And instead, like, you can invade the eastern side of Poland, I'll invade the western side. We'll kind of meet in the middle, we'll have a bro fight in the middle of it, and we'll go over and do this sort of thing. And basically, there's Hitler's moving all his weapons and tanks and everything over to the eastern border with Poland. And so basically, Churchill says, if you invade Poland, it is war. And Hitler is kind of thinking about the war. At the same time, he's like, there's no way they're actually going to go through with this. And so when he invades Poland September 1st, 1939, the Allies declare war and World War II begins. So basically, appeasement was the Allies giving in to Hitler's demands until eventually they had enough. And then, when it came to Poland, they defended. Now, here's the thing of this. The Soviet Union was technically part of the Allies, but they would not fight against the Germans. And this infuriated Churchill. He basically said from that point on, we cannot trust the Soviet Union. What's also kind of messed up is there were some areas in France along the border that sided with Nazi Germany, not with France. So basically it was like traitors from within. So France is going to end up folding pretty quickly in the war because they've got to deal with all these enemies around them, not to mention that they were kind of relying on a World War I defensive war, and it turns out to be a wholly different war, and it's going to be problematic for France. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean France just gives up. France gets a bad rap. People will say, oh, France are traitors, they give up. Even people who know better. France did not. They fought. They fought a guerrilla war. And you guys know the word sabotage? Okay, you guys know what sabotage is? Yeah, you mess up something on purpose. You try to make someone's life difficult by screwing something with what works, or like you mess up someone's car so it fails. That's sabotage. The term saboteur is the French like resistance fighters, saboteurs, those who were blowing up German tanks or destroying food or whatever they could do to make life hell for the Nazis while they were there. That was what they were doing. They were fighting tooth and nail to try to reclaim their country, and it's going to be kind of rough on them. When Russia ends up getting into the war, and Soviet Union gets into war, it's going to be really rough on them. And we're going to get to some more abuses of human rights there because basically there was some pretty awful treatment of Russians by Germans, and then later, in revenge, the Russians went completely crazy on the Germans. So it's some pretty awful, dark times, to be perfectly honest. That's one of the things that's kind of interesting, I think, about World War II. We like to think of it as a case of the good guys versus the bad guys, but that's not really an accurate description. It's more like normal people doing really awful things in this backdrop of a really terrible time. It's not quite as easy as good versus evil. Even when people will say, oh, so what? The only time there's been definitive evil on the good side. No, everyone was pretty equally bad. It's just that, we don't like to admit to it. I mean, you want a great example of that? Look at what we did to the Japanese in the firebombing campaigns. Essentially, we were trying to get Japan to surrender, and so what we would do is we'd go in with napalm. Sure, I guess remember what napalm is? Okay, basically imagine gasoline that's the consistency of Jello. Okay, so it's really sticky, and now light it on fire. So whatever it sticks to, it burns like crazy. So if it gets on your skin, you're burning to death. And you can't put it out in the water. It's god-awful stuff. And the thing of it is a lot of the coastal areas of Japan, the houses were built with wood. You can imagine what happens when you drop napalm on wood. We killed millions of civilians to try to get them to surrender, and they didn't. And burning to death isn't exactly a fun way to do it. So, I mean, it's not like we were knight in shining armor who was doing all these amazing things. We were fighting a bloody war. And we had to make some pretty terrible decisions because there's never a good guy in the war. That's one of the things we have to realize. There are good people in the war. That's a distinction, I feel, that we have to make. There are people who do the right thing. But as a general whole, as a group, if you're in a war, you've probably failed somewhere along the way. It's easy to say that violence is the only answer, but that's rarely true. In fact, most people really don't want to be violent if they can help it. But at the same time, people will do some really terrible things whenever you take away responsibility. That's another lesson you learn from World War II. But we will be studying that later. So, To summarize, the war breaks out because of aggression from nations like Japan and Germany and Italy, and it's going to eventually result in a world war because the League of Nations have to do something, or else they find themselves in a problem. But they really only left themselves one choice. Now, any questions? Please. Hup-a-dip-boop-boo.